Please welcome George Fowler.
All right, good morning, everyone. All right. So, haven't been introduced like that before. That was good. Dr. Huxtable. All right. This is fun. This is my first time coming here, and I was involved many years ago with the Promise Keepers. It's nice to see men get together to actually kind of share that passion instead of, everyone off in their separate corners. So I was sitting there just praying, letting the Holy Spirit just come up, whatever was supposed to come up. And I think God has a pretty funny sense of humor. Somehow I'm involved in kind of teaching all over the world, men, women, families, how to be more emotionally available. So if you would think, who would God pick to do this, to kind of lead this charge, to talk about emotions? You're probably some Ivy League educated, maybe some romantic Latin lover, some famous artist. In this area he chose some emotionally constricted, funny accent, Irish Catholic who doesn't really express any emotions at all. So that has to be a God thing, right? When I grew up in College Point, which is a blue-collar town in Queens, they said growing up the only way out of College Point was PD, FD, or OD. That was it. There were no therapists. I didn't even know what a therapist was, so there was no way I thought I could be a therapist when I grew up. When I was in, my voice is still kind of funny, when I was in, I think, junior school, my voice would crack, and my mother, I actually went to the doctor, and they said, oh yeah, they gave me a note saying I didn't have to talk in class. And I had this note for like 3 years. So to think that someday I would go all over and public speak, would never even be a possibility. My one class I quit in college was a public speaking class. I got so nervous, I said, this isn't for me. So again, to think that I'm up here doing this, I pinch myself and say, how does this happen? Well, we know how it happens. So a little of my background, I was actually, none of my friends, I was talking to Paul, I was very involved in football growing up. In my town, football was everything. But nobody went to college to play football. It was all just about representing your town and playing the other town. Nobody wanted to go to college. So I was the first person, and I was the fifth of 8 kids, and nobody went to college. I was the first to go to college. And right out of college, I went to the police department. It was my father actually filled out the application for me. I said, why do you want to go to college? I mean, you get yourself a nice city job, because that's just what most of the people did around. And my plan was to go to law school. And I did well in college. I went to the police department. I realized I didn't want no part of law. Once I actually saw what was happening in the streets, I decided to change course. And my plan was to go to the fire department, which I did, but I didn't know really what else to do with my life. I figured, let me try to do something for afterwards, after I retire after 25 years. And I was really involved with kind of self-help books and some of the Promise Keepers. So I said, right, you know what, maybe being a therapist, I found out about this would be a good thing. But do you think I want the guys in the firehouse to know? Give you a sense of the guys that I work with. I went to a fire, came back from a fire, my captain, a piece of glass fell, ripped through his bunker gear. He probably needed about 40 stitches. He came back to the firehouse with duct tape and just taped his arm, right? These guys don't talk about their feelings. And that's exactly who you want coming for you if there's a fire. I don't want the guy next to me saying, I'm feeling a little vulnerable today, George, So there's good reasons we turn off our feelings, and we really want to honor that. So I never wanted these guys to know anything about it. So I tried to hide it. But like any family, things have a way of coming out. So I'll never forget coming into the firehouse one day. I go to my locker to change, and they had spray painted my locker with flowers, and they renamed me Cupid because I knew I was becoming this fruity therapist. And I mean, it's funny, but imagine what it's like being a firefighter. crawling into a fire. You know, try to get your anger up because you got to break down a door. You don't know what you're going to find. And you hear over the radio, Cupid, Cupid, can you break this door down? I mean, it really was. If I could have gotten rid of that nickname, I would have. And so my plan was, once I retire, I would have this second career. And then 9/11 happened. And I mean, the New York City Fire Department has, unfortunately, it is the most aggressive fire department in the world. And we have a lot of experience with death because, you know, on average, like one guy dies a year. September 11, we lost 343 guys, which is the single largest loss of emergency personnel in the history of the world in one moment. So many of the people we lost were leaders. So, I mean, it was such a vacuum after 9/11. I mean, it was such a methodical machine, the fire department, the FDNY, that we just kind of next guy steps up, and it's kind of seamless. This was such a huge blow that the whole system just got kind of screwed. And that was a big moment of truth for me because they needed help. And I was like, well, by that time I had gone back to school. I had just finished my graduate degree as a marriage and family therapist, and I was like, all right, I got to help out somehow. I still stayed at the firehouse and I worked down at Ground Zero, but my days off I volunteered for the counseling unit. And the number one thing that we would see was like alcohol, marital discord, things we'd expect. And I mean, imagine going into a firehouse that lost 14 guys. What do you say? I mean, you'd sit at the kitchen table with the remaining guys, and you'd sit there and be like, there's nothing I could really say that's going to bring any relief. So that was an incredibly humbling time to just sit here and just sit in people's pain and really not be able to do anything about it. Massive amounts of helplessness. You know, most of these guys are fixing it, guys, but you couldn't fix this. There was really nothing you could do. So what we kept seeing after all these firehouse visitors, marriages being destroyed. And I said to myself, all right, I was in a large meeting like this of all therapists, and they said there were thousands of therapists lined up wanting to see the individual firefighters with their post-traumatic stress symptoms, and nobody wanted to see the couples. What is it about couples that is so intimidating that people didn't want to see them? So nobody was seeing these couples, and that was the greatest need in this meeting. And I was sitting there as a brand new therapist saying to myself, wait a second, I have to be better than nobody. And there's a need, so I wanted to raise my hand, but I didn't want to work with firefighters. The last thing I want to do is hear about their problems and their emotions and everything else. So it was really that was my Damascus road. I was like, I didn't know what to do. So reluctantly, I put one finger up. And somehow somebody saw that finger and said, you got the couples. And overnight, my days off, I'd see 10 couples a day. I got all the couples. And I'll never forget the first week I was seeing couples. They were screaming so loud, fighting in my office. And I thought, you know, all right, at least I'm letting them express themselves. I really know what I'm doing. They're yelling, and I'll just try to hang in there. Until the other therapists in my office were knocking on my door saying, hey, we can't get any work done with your screaming couples. Do something about it. And what I did in my desperation is I sent an email out to this Sue Johnson, who was this founder of this emotionally focused therapy, just saying, hey, can you give me some help, maybe a tape or something? And she said, better yet, I'll fly out and I'll train you. So I had the great fortune of being trained by one of the greatest couples therapists in the world. So for her, I'm eternally thankful. But this is much more than, I feel like that commercial or whatever, that hair club. I'm not only the president, I'm also the member, right? I mean, how do I talk to my wife about this stuff? I mean, I followed all the rules. And when you go into a firehouse, there's a big sign that says, whatever is said here stays here. Right? So we don't talk to our wives about what's going on in our lives as far as the firehouse. You don't want to burden them with your trauma and the things that you saw, the things that we were exposed to. And what's great about the firehouse, it's something like this. You can really be real. You can share everything except what? Your fears. So what do you do with that? I mean, after 9/11, you definitely expected another attack. Who knows the things that you're breathing in? Every firefighter was having immense fears, but had nowhere to go with the fears. So what do? Can't talk to the guys about it. You don't talk to your wife about this stuff. So what do you think started to happen in my marriage? Medicaid, right? That's what a lot of guys do. Right? So, again, that was another huge moment in my life. What do I do? If I follow the rules, it was setting me up for more and more distance. And I can turn to alcohol, that great Irish saying, everybody focuses on the drinking, but not the thirst. Right? What does the drinking, what's the function of drinking that kind of works for a lot of guys? So, what I'm going to talk a little bit about how to connect is really what I learned to do with my wife first. I said, screw it. The rules that I were taught can't work. I mean, my wife didn't want to talk to me about what she was struggling with because she didn't want to add more burden to me. So she wasn't talking about what really mattered the most, and I wasn't really talking about it. And when we don't talk about these things, we know what happens. We get further apart from each other. So hopefully what I'm going to do in the next 15 minutes is just give you a sense of how to bridge that distance that kind of creeps into relationships. So here I am. The good old days. So much. Why did people get married? Again, when I grew up, half of marriages ended in divorce, and I didn't see anybody who was happily married. And I said to myself, I'm never going to do that crazy thing. Get married. What's the point of getting married? I can live in a bachelor pad, do whatever I want. That seems like a heaven to me. Why do we all get married? What is it we're looking for? The good news about therapy today is there's so much science behind what we're actually looking for. If you look at this baby, it really doesn't know where its body ends and its parents begin. Our nervous systems are meant to be captured by another nervous system. Again, I'm speaking to the choir. People know this in our relationship with God, right? It's about being part of something bigger than ourselves. That's the way we're made to do it that way. So you see this baby, if that parent was screaming and fighting at its partner, you think that baby could be in this place? It needs a certain responsiveness to get to this degree of safety, this degree of calmness. And as a society, we're doing a better job with our kids as far as meeting their needs. But somehow, our tradition seems to teach us that, around teenagers, we stop needing these things. That they need to become independent and strong and tough, but we no longer need people to kind of soothe us or to be there for us. And again, the science is saying that's absolutely incorrect. These needs to connect are from cradle to death. They're no different, that baby, than this older couple, where our nervous systems need another nervous system to actually co-regulate the emotion and co-create the meaning. And again, I won't bore you with a lot of that stuff. So what happens when we lose our connection? Most of us get lost on all the content that we're fighting about. Sex, money, kids tend to be the three top. So if you'd come into my office, you'd probably have something that you're fighting about. And my job is to get you to see those things are important, but there's more going on than just what you're fighting about. What's underneath the fight is really about the state of the connection, the state of the relationship. So I know I'm on the border of Boston Red Sox Yankee, but I'm a Yankee fan, all right? So if I want to go to a Yankee game and me and my wife are in a good place, what does my wife say? Go with your friends, you deserve it, you work hard. Me and my wife are in a bad place, what does my wife say? You're never home, what the hell are you doing? It's not about the Yankee game. It's about the state of our relationship. So what happens when we lose the relationship, when the distance starts to creep in? Again, what happens the one moment Jesus felt the disconnection? Why have you forsaken me? What's it like to trust the connection and then find the connection is gone? Even in that moment, the despair, the body sends signals. We just lost a good thing. What happened? The protest that comes with disconnection. And I want you to think about how you do it. There tends to be oversimplifying. There's really two ways we deal with disconnection. Half the population deals with disconnection by, look at the emotion in these pictures. Right? I'm going to deal with disconnection by protesting. This thing's going in and out. Right? So, if my energy is, there's a threat, something's going wrong, I want to talk about it, I want to fix it, I want to deal with it now, we're going to go, it's all going towards talking about it. Some of us relate to that. Like, there's a problem and I want to fix it now. I'm not going to wait till tomorrow. My energy is about mobilizing, fighting, protesting, dealing with it. The other half of the population does what? What's the energy in these pictures? Again, both make sense. I'm going to deal with threat. Let's calm this down. Let's not make it worse. Let's deal with this when we're calmer and more rational. Both make sense. Both work in a lot of different environments. The problem is, most of the time, Route 1 marries Route 2. Think that's going to cause a problem? Right. My energy is to want to talk about it with you, and your energy wants to not talk about it tomorrow. That's going to create some predictable misses in relationships. So let's look at me and my wife. This is an example that came, I don't know, a couple of years ago, but it still happens. I tell couples all the time and where I present, we're all in this mess together. I'm going to try to help you see things in your relationship, and I'm going to go home and screw it up with my wife. If I had extra time, I'll tell you about the fight we had last night that we still haven't repaired. But ultimately, I was coming home. This was when I was still in the firehouse. We were doing 24-hour shifts, right? I really wanted to see my wife. I was probably driving too fast. I'm looking to see my kids, have dinner together, maybe put the kids to bed, have alone time with my wife. I really want to connect, right? I open the front door, and as I'm coming in, my wife says to me, "Did you get the milk?" All right. Now, when she says that, something happens. If we really slow this process down, at the bottom, as a guy, I feel good being able to perform, being able to get things right. When I start getting the message I'm doing something wrong, it doesn't feel good. Something in my stomach's like, what do I do with that feeling? Which is I'm getting, because you think I got the milk? I didn't get the milk, right? So what do I do? And this is really the vulnerability, which is just this feeling in me that's like, what I was hoping for is probably not going to happen. What do I do with this feeling? I didn't have a dad who helped me talk about these things. If I try to talk, what do you think is going to happen? What did my experience say is going to happen if I try to talk about this stuff? It's going to lead to what? It's going to lead to a fight. I'm going to say something, she's going to defend herself. Well, before you know, we're fighting. I don't want to fight. I'm tired, I'm exhausted. So how do I protect myself? I don't want to fight. That's how I'm trying to protect myself and protect the relationship. So what do? It feels bad. I don't know what the heck to do with this. So I go and protect myself. How do I protect myself? I go upstairs and check my emails. Make sense? Boop, boop. What does checking the emails do to my wife? Her version of the story, she said, "Honey, did you get the milk?" In a beautiful, soft voice. I don't remember that. Right. The first thing I'm doing is what? I'm going upstairs checking emails. She's been waiting all day to talk to me, dealing with all problems with little kids, and here I am going upstairs. What would if she could talk about the vulnerability, it would probably be some pain in her chest, some feeling like, I don't want to talk to her. I don't want to be with her. I'm kind of rejecting her. I'm not responding to her. I don't like her. I don't care. whatever all these feeling words that our wives can put to these things so quick. And notice the energy of that is, I don't like what's happening to me. And what do you think my wife's going to do with that? I'm getting the like frozen stare that most men have. Like, I'm not sure. I don't want to get the wrong answer here. Right? She wants to do something. Her energy deals with threat by dealing with it and talking about it. The worst case scenario is to be alone. That is her biggest fear. She has nothing to lose. A fight is much better than being alone. So she will not sit in that kitchen and just dwell on it. What do you think my wife does? She follows me up the stairs. And what does she say to me? I asked you one little thing. You couldn't do one little thing? Boop. Again, what's my fear? I'm failing. What's she telling me? This is why I don't want to have the conversation. It's a self-fulfilling loop. I'm afraid of being told I'm doing it wrong. She's telling me I'm doing it wrong. This is great. What do I do with that? If there was a window, if it wasn't so high, I'd jump out, but I'm trapped. All right, so if I'm trapped, what am I going to do? All right, now game on. Right, now here comes the fight that I didn't want to happen is now happening. So, what am I going to say to my wife? I don't even know why I bothered coming home. I should have just stayed at work. Shouldn't I? At work, people think I'm terrific. They tell me I'm getting it right all the time. I get reinforcements. I get rewards, promotions. I get home, I get all this crap that I'm doing it wrong. I should have stayed at work. Boop. What's my wife's fear? Being alone. What am I telling her? I'd rather be anywhere than with you. Perfectly reinforces the fear. What does my wife do with that? Sure, all you do is work. Your kids don't even know who you are. Now I just don't fail with the milk, and I fail with all little things in general, but I'm failing as a dad too. This is such a great conversation. Let's have more of these, please. Perfectly reinforces it. Again, you can see the momentum start to build. What do I do with that? What do I say back to my wife? Well, you know what? Maybe I wouldn't work so much if you didn't spend so much money. Boop. Clear signals I'm telling my wife. I don't want to be with her. I don't respect what she's doing. This is what happens when the momentum, it just happens so fast. What does my wife say back to me? You know what? Her mother was right about me. Her mother said, he's not dependable. Boop. Her mother knew it the whole time that I was a loser and failed. This is such a great conversation. Again, what do I say back to her? Funny you should talk about your mother. As my mother said, that no man will ever make you happy. You're my therapist. How do you help us? If you're going to stay up here and try to fix our mothers, who's getting the milk? Are you working too much? Are you spending too much money? You are missing the real game. The real game is about what's going on here. That's a whole different conversation. Unfortunately, as men, we don't get a lot of help to put words to these emotional signals. They are there. We're as capable of stopping these emotional signals as we are stopping ourselves from sneezing. They absolutely are there. The thing is, if you don't listen to them, they're really hard to communicate. So I'll give you an example with my son. He came off the bus in kindergarten, Christian, my older guy. And he came off crying, and he said to me, Dad, Liam doesn't want to be my friend anymore. What do you think this famous emotionally focused therapist said? Liam's a jerk. Let's call Joey up. Right? But what is that saying emotionally to him? Yeah, That sad feeling, like my dad would say to me, send your brother out there to beat that guy up. That sad feeling, don't show that sad feeling. And that's incredibly effective in certain environments. It helps me crawl into a fire. But when I can't talk about that vulnerable signal, it makes it harder to communicate to my wife what it is I need. So I'm so inspired by something like this, where guys are becoming more comfortable just being real with each other. I'll give you one last story about my other son, who is quite the character. He's tested my patience and all my therapy skills here. But I was talking to him about it. I actually coached him in football, and we just won the championship, undefeated in West Point. So he's a fabulous athlete, and the team's very talented. And he's used to winning, and he's used to doing well. Well, one day I'm shooting basketball with him, right? And he takes a shot, and he misses the shot. He takes another shot, misses, takes another shot, and misses it. He's getting more and more frustrated. Finally, he takes the ball. He takes another shot, misses it, and he takes the ball, and he throws it, and he says, I hate basketball. I suck at it. I never want to play it again. What should I do with him? Should I do what my dad would do to me, which is kick him in the ass and say, stop your whining? Or should I tell him, listen, if you want to make the shot, bend your knees, elbow in, follow through? What the science is saying today is when your brain is emotionally dysregulated, you can't take in the information. It's not that you're trying to be difficult. You can't do it. You can't shift hemispheres. When you're dysregulated, you can't take in information. Other researchers say that advice, which is what we love giving as fixers, is only effective 10% of the time. Which means 10% of the time, I want the advice, you give me the advice, it's attuned to each other, and it works. That means 90% of the time, the advice is not working. So when I try to give my son advice, and he can't take it, what happens to me? I failed. And here we are in a loop with my son. You little disrespectful twerp. My dad would never even shoot baskets with me. Here I am trying to help you, and you're not even responding, you little jerk. You know what? And now I'm screaming at him. And what's my son in a dysregulated place going to do with that? Scream back, and it's just a total mess. And again, when you start seeing the science behind this, you start realizing that it's set up to fail. So most of the time I get it wrong. But what did I do this one time? I went and picked up the basketball, and I started to punch it. And I said, bad basketball, I hate you. You do suck, I hate you. And I started to punch it. What do you think my son did? What does laughter do? It soothes your dysregulation. He's feeling I'm getting his frustration. And in that moment, we start to connect. And what do you think he then does? The most fascinating thing happens. He turns to me and he says, Dad, what should I do to make the shot? It's so bad with this kid, I can't teach a thing. I have to get other dads to say something to him because he will not listen to me. In a moment of feeling connected, he wants my help and advice. Think how fascinating that is. So again, that's my hope here. We're really good at fixing it, and we get rewarded for fixing things. But a lot of times, our attempts to fix actually make things further and further apart. And to wrap all this up, so many of us have been trained, and it works so well, to not be vulnerable. If you look at even the word vulnerability, it means to be open to a weakness or attack. Who wants to be vulnerable? So find another word. If I was working with a couple, I wouldn't even use the word. But being authentic, being genuine, listen to whatever the signal your body is saying, that's real strength. And the beauty of our spiritual tradition is saying that it's actually in our brokenness, it's in our failure, it's in our struggles that we actually need people the most. It's easy to be loved when we're getting it right. But when we're getting it wrong and we're still loved, we know that love is real. That's why most of us, if you think about the most crucial moments in your lives, the moments when God has really showed up, that's exactly what has happened. we're broken, we're struggling, and God shows up in a big way. That's the natural template. Why would we not use that same template in our relationships? It is in when I am weak that I am strong. This is a radically countercultural message. We believe our strength is in being strong, and we're going to hide our weaknesses. If we could just teach our kids, and I could teach my sons, that sometimes it's okay to be weak and to show that, and have people come to you in that place, he will be more resilient. That's not just George's opinion. The research is really, really crystal strong with that. And Richard Rohr, who I don't know how many people know, is an amazing spiritual leader, writer. Most amazing fact about Jesus, unlike any other religious founder, is that he found God in imperfection, in failure, in struggle, and told us that we must do the same. So, to all you, we're in this mess together. I'm so thankful to be a part of just kind of seeing everyone in this room coming together and just sharing their struggles and encouraging each other, and look at the connection that fosters. So thank you, everyone. Yeah.
George, thank you. I know normally, guys, we would launch right into Terry and kind of bring it at home, but I have this feeling that as we are about to launch into the most joyous but often the most stressful part of the year with families and all, that there might be one or two questions in how to just navigate the next few weeks, let alone life. So let's just do a little Q&A. George is open to it, so if you've got some questions. I have one just to kick it off, which is short of punching a basketball. And by the way, after I ask this one, which won't get personal, it's just a question, we won't have the Q&A in the recording of this, so you don't have to worry that if you ask a question, your wife's going to go online and listen to the Q&A and realize you asked this question. Or even worse, realize you know the answer and you didn't do it.
You're in a doghouse.
Just like practical advice to diffuse a situation, like the ones you talked about, like just without, short of signing up for 10 sessions with you between now and Christmas.
Right.
Any practical tips on just how to kind of handle that situation when you see it coming?
It is somewhat counterintuitive to try to give the person permission for what they're doing, but it totally diffuses the situation, right? So I remember calling customer service, and I was put on hold and disconnected and, pissed off and hung up, and finally I call back and get somebody, and I'm screaming and yelling. My anger, my signal is saying, this is so unfair. What do you think the lady did on the other side? I don't know where she got this training, but she was like, it's so unacceptable, sir. It's outrageous. I can't believe my company did this to you. I'm going to make it right to you. What happened to my anger? Whoop! Right? When your partner's angry and we defend ourselves and basically tell them you shouldn't be angry, it only feeds the anger. Right? So the counterintuitive move is trying to kind of give permission for what the person's doing. So for you to be able to say, hey, listen, I can get you really frustrated. You're trying to tell me something. I really want to hear what you want to say. You're going to feel that person go whoop right down. It really is focusing on what happens in most relationships. Of both people are coming in needing something simultaneously. I need this, and you say, well, I need that, and neither one is really. The average person listens for 7 seconds before they're ready to kind of reply with what they want. So I wish I had a simpler answer to that. But if you take out of this, connect before I give advice, connect before I fix. If you just try that, I guarantee you it will work a lot better. And that it gets hard for a lot of us because we're so used to fixing, we don't even know what that looks like to try to connect. The good news, again, is disconnection is an inevitable part of the process. It's what good couples can do, master couples can do, is they can repair. It might be the next day. So how do you go to somebody and say, you know what, I really got hurt, and they could hear it as a bid and come towards you? Unfortunately, what you're talking about in a lot of environments that we're in, we can't repair. And if we can't repair, where does that leave us? So if you can't talk to them, if there's a rift here, but you can't really talk about it, all you can do is maintain the distance. You can't bridge the distance. So really, what I just chatted quickly about was couples, but please, this is so much more than couples. This is exactly what's working in this room. It's exactly what works in my firehouse. It's exactly what works with our little kids. You know, I love this saying, I wish I was the person my dog thinks I am, right? What do dogs do that is so beautiful, right? If I'm late and I'm racing, I'm cutting people off, and I'm a raving lunatic, and I come home agitated, dysregulated, frustrated, what does my dog do? Right? I've been waiting all day for you, master. You're home. My world can start. You're here. What does that do to my nervous system? I could try to talk myself out of all this anger, and it's really costly. When somebody else comes alongside of that, my dog, and says, I'm here, and connects with me, my body soothes. That's the natural process. We are created for soothing. It is not survival of the fittest. It's survival of the most nurtured. That is our heritage. And yet we don't hear that, especially in the Northeast. And who would you think would be sending this message but this shut-down firefighter who speaks broken English? I don't know.
George, thank you.